June 30, 2019, Palace of Sports in Rome. It is coming to a close, the Life 120 Day, a unique, memorable, historic day for Life 120 and all of us. It will conclude with a special episode of our program, The Health Seeker. 120 minutes devoted to in-depth study, dedicated to the warmth of the audience, but especially dedicated to the true essence of Life 120, knowledge. And so we can only begin. And once again I can say, together with 4,000 friends present here tonight, lights, the Health Seeker. Let's get started. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the final episode of this season of The Health Seeker. So as you see and as you have understood, I am very excited. I have been thinking about this sentence to say now. I must have thought of it at least 120 times to stay on topic. Each time, however, I had to say a thank you. Yes, because I immediately want to start with a thank you. I want to thank all the people who made this day possible. I want to thank all the people that made it possible to make a new edition of The Health Seeker. And I want to once again thank all the people who made it possible to do this episode. Then most of all, I want to thank you who are following us from home. And then my heart and my thanks go out to this wonderful Life 120 people who are here at the Palazzo dello Sport in Rome. So gentlemen, it will be a very long evening, but it will certainly be a historic evening because it is at the conclusion, as I told you before, of Life 120 Day, a day that, as has been said, will change medicine forever. We had over 5,000 in attendance today. Life 120 Day was, in a very brief trailer, this. Welcome to the Life 120 Day. It was truly a long day, perhaps tiring, but certainly as exciting as the passion that Sunday after Sunday, day after day, it takes the Life 120 people to pass on to all of us. So now, though, as you know, we have to start a special episode of our The Health Seeker. And as you know, it's time to introduce the one who is fighting for all of us, who is practically opposing so-called dogmatic medicine just to change this medicine, who is devoting his whole life to the biggest cultural revolution on health here in Italy, the one who has to respond to unspeakable attacks every day just to enable all of us to get healthy again. In short, the time has come to bring in him. Panzironi.
Good evening. Welcome to this historic evening. Friends, dear Life 120 people, this evening I have the honor of meeting you, of meeting even your smallest glance, of shaking your hands, of feeling you so present and participating. And all this fills my heart with joy and repays me for any sacrifice. To feel your gratitude and to catch such gratitude from your eyes in these very emotional and for all of us unforgettable moments is not an achievement. It is a gift that I feel is ours and that no one can take away from us. I am a man whom life has rewarded because never, I repeat, never would I have believed that I could so profoundly affect the health of my fellow man through my work as a journalist. From the very first day, when my curiosity, my passion for research were bringing me so close to the truth, I understood that I could not keep these discoveries so simple, but at the same time so revolutionary, just for myself. It would have been selfish and unselfish toward everyone. Disseminating them to as many women and men as possible was therefore an obligation, a goal, a mission that all these years I have considered my only reason for living. And today, among you, and thanks to you, I have confirmation of how necessary that duty was. And this duty I felt was inevitable in the face of the too many deaths caused by degenerative diseases that could be easily prevented by a correct lifestyle. But despite the fact that my efforts are saving thousands of lives, I have to clash with the very medicine that should be our strongest ally instead. I often wonder if it is a hoax or a tragic and surreal twist of fate, but that medicine that has clearly demonstrated its failure, its sloth, its betrayal of itself in the most profound and unforgivable way, selling out to fatten the sick industry evermore, does not accept that a mere journalist should point out the limits and propose a different path, namely a health renaissance that is of all and for all. In this place tonight, right now, I am seeing thousands of people who can testify to the efficacy and goodness of the Life 120 lifestyle. We are here healthier, happier, longer lived, and the institutions, instead of questioning and putting themselves at the service of health, shine by the stubbornness with which they do not want to believe me. Your obvious healings, but instead decide to put us on the index and criminalize us. My soul is in turmoil, and it is thanks to your enthusiasm, which is a wave that sweeps over me, and I feel on my skin all the inexpressible emotion of those who are healed, those who are better, those who have believed, those who have touched with their own hands the validity, honesty, and strength of Life 120. We are all a people made up of thousands and thousands of different people, of colors, of cultures, of distant identities, but communicated by a few and clear values: well-being, awareness, and health. I will never stop saying thank you to each of you. I will never stop thinking that thank you must also say thank you to yourselves because you dared, because you tried, and because you won. We know that time and history will have the last word. On that day, we will be there, and so will our children, our loved ones, and all those to whom we will have given the most precious commodity of all, health. We are the pioneers of a new era, the ones who with the patience and virtue of the wise crumble the old cathedral conformity and give back to everyone what they are entitled to, health and the right to live a long and peaceful life. In this place tonight, let us all lay together the first brick of a granitic, unbreakable and enduring reality, which is to revolutionize the world of medicine and health forever. Here and now we say enough of dogma, enough of the indolence of politics, enough of the laziness of certain cynical and corrupt science. I had a hope, but today I can tell you that that hope has become an extraordinary reality. And tonight the truest and most beautiful reality is you, it is us, all together, building the future we want. Welcome to the final night of the Health Seeker. Welcome to your date with history. You will remember with pride that you have contributed to the greatest change mankind can ever remember. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Mr. Panzironi, this is the reception of the Life 120 people. Panzironi, I find you very excited. Is it true?
Yes, excited and exhausted. There was a sea of people and the Life 120 people, so this much love, this desire to thank. I don't know what I would do for you. I would give my life for you.
Panzironi, we can go on for 2 hours like this without saying more, because truly the love that the Life 120 people reserve for her is really high. It is very high. So, Mr. Panzironi, thank you for existing. You see, I don't know if...
It is really hard not to cry in front of this thing, this phenomenon, in front of the Life 120 people. Really, you are extraordinary. You are unique, unique.
I see it with tears in my eyes for the first time in so many years that I have known her. So it means they are real tears. The emotion is real.
We will let the heart speak tonight. We will let Life 120 let you speak as the greatest witness in the history of this country.
And indeed. Mr. Panzironi, now we are going to explain how the Life 120 people here tonight are going to be featured in the episode. We have given light bulbs to our audience, and we are going to ask them to turn them on or off in response to questions that I will ask here from the stage. All the participants who are given a light bulb have filled out a medical questionnaire by responsibly and sincerely signing their healings that they are going to reconfirm. Then during our episode, I want to ask Beatrice how they will have to turn this light bulb on and off.
Dear Benedetto, it's very, very simple. Dear Benedetto, then this is the light bulb. This is a string when you say turn on. If you have suffered from the pathology, just pull the string and the light bulb will turn on. Then later, when you say who has solved this pathology, they will simply put the string back down and it will turn off. Very simple, no? You understand? Just pull and retract, mind you. Be careful, it is a live experiment, but really, really important.
This evening we are going to talk about some major pathologies, the most prevalent in the modern era. And so we are going to ask the Life 120 people to testify if they had the pathologies we are going to talk about. And then if they resolve them after starting the Life 120 lifestyle, then we are also going to ask if they were taking medications and if they took them off. First, though, I want to ask Mr. Panzironi how these pathologies were chosen.
Well, they are the most common diseases. They are the ones that involve the largest number of people. So we have chosen not diseases that are maybe serious, but have millions and millions of sick people. that today maybe are only treated with drugs, when we instead have shown with Life 120 they can be solved simply by following a correct lifestyle.
And we are going to demonstrate that tonight with these collective testimonies, how Life 120 has healed thousands of people present here in this theater tonight. So let's start with some small focuses. The first pathology, let's go find out what is.
Headache, in its countless expressions, occasionally involves 5 out of 7 people, while 3 to 5% of the population suffers from chronic migraine. There are also less common forms of headache such as cluster headache, which involves only 0.1% of the population, but its severity has also made it renamed as the suicide headache. Overall, the disease of migraines costs in terms of public spending in Europe alone a record 27 billion euros a year. Pharmacological treatments are essentially symptomatic and risk chronicity of the condition. In Italy, about 3 million people suffer from chronic migraine, with a loss of 12 million working days and a social cost of 6 billion euros a year. It is also estimated that 4 million doctor visits are made each year in Italy just because of migraines.
So Panzironi, headaches are among the most prevalent diseases of modern times.
First of all, we should not underestimate this pathology, because by now the notion has passed that when we have a headache, a migraine, we can just maybe treat ourselves or not change our lifestyle. In fact, the headache is really an alarm bell that is telling us that there is inflammation within our brain tissue. So it is important to find out the causes and stop this process, because then over time it can induce much more important pathologies.
So, Mr. Panzironi, let's now see what are the causes and treatments according to so-called modern medicine for different types of headaches. Let's look at it together.
Then migraine has as a cause familiarity. It sounds strange to say it like that. Genetics, probably. They are families of migraineurs, like families of hypertensives. It's a highly familial disorder, this one. Hormonal variations, climate. People many times walk around with hats for headaches. Actually, it's the major problem represented by humidity. There's a whole literature on Sirocco, for example, and the ability to trigger headaches.
Then let's start talking about treatments, because the person who has a headache, the first thing they do is they go to the pharmacy and they get the first over-the-counter medication that they find available.
We have non-specific analgesics that can be effective, and they are the over-the-counter products. What is the alternative? Of alternative, there are what I call the original spares. This often requires us to use the more specific drugs, 25 years old now, so we should use them often. They are the triptans.
So, Mr. Panzironi, genetic causes, moisture, and then symptomatic drugs. What do you think?
I would say that on this pathology, medicine has totally demonstrated its failure. Let's certainly gloss over the causes, because there would be a bet on that alone. But how do you continue to treat a disease for decades only with symptomatic drugs, without doing anything to prevent the cause of the appearance of the disease? This is the failure of medicine.
So, Panzironi, you are being accused of anti-scientificity. And we respond with a headache tutorial that scientifically explains what the real causes are. Let's look at it together.
Vasodilation of the cerebral circulatory system is induced by excessive cortisol production, which reduces serotonin production and increases blood pressure by activating nitric oxide production. Excessive cortisol production depends on sugar-rich diet in response to glycemic declines and induced inflammation. Vasodilation is also induced by the excessive production of acidic waste caused by excess sugar and neurons. Another actor in vessel dilation is the neuropeptide CGRP, produced by trigeminal nerve neurons, stimulated by interleukin-1 beta, which is also produced by mast cells during the phenomenon of gut dysbiosis, induced by sugar-rich foods. Finally, vasodilation is also induced by the biogenic amine histamine produced by the Th2 immune system, which is imbalanced by sugar-rich food.
So, Panzironi, the video basically explains the real causes of headaches, obviously the so-called Mediterranean diet.
Yes, we of course explain it in our episodes of The Health Seeker. And then we do one thing. We invite our witnesses who come and tell how extraordinary stories of people who maybe for 20 years have been going to headache centers have always taken a sea of drugs. Then they change their diet, and in a week, the headache practically disappears. Here I wonder how long it will take this official medicine to realize this scientific evidence.
And we, Mr. Panzironi, this evening, just thanks to People Life 120, we will demonstrate what you are saying. So, attention, People Life 120. Let's dim the lights in the hall, please. The question is this: who had headaches, migraine, headache before starting Life 120? Turn on the light bulb. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you who have been cured of these diseases by following the Life 120 lifestyle, turn off the light bulb. Then, Panzironi.
I seem to have counted 1 or 2 light bulbs that did not go out. In short, we are talking about hundreds of people, because behind these lights is the life, and there is the suffering of the Life 120 people who are happy today because they are no longer suffering.
I see them all turned off. Now I ask you another question. Whoever was taking medication to treat headaches, migraines, and headaches, turn on the light bulb. Good, good, in view like that. Now I ask another question. Those who, following the Life 120 lifestyle, no longer take medication for these conditions, turn off the light bulb. Panzironi, let's have the audience review, obviously.
I hope we are not seeing some pharmaceutical company executive tonight, because my guess is he is not sleeping tonight.
Here we have our Life 120 people. Now let's move on to the second pathology. Let's see which pathology we're going to talk about.
The phenomenon of allergies is taking on an alarming dimension in Italy. In fact, it is estimated that about 18 million people suffer from it, including 12 million from allergic rhinitis, 3 million from food allergies, 5 million from atopic dermatitis, 3 million from asthma, and about 300,000 from hives. The situation in children under 14 is even more dramatic. In fact, 10% suffer from asthma, 20% from allergic rhinitis, and 10% from atopic dermatitis. This disease is having an uncontrolled progression, as in the 1950s, only 10% of the population was affected, compared to a rate of 30% today. Moreover, the future is expected to be even bleaker, as studies confirm that by 2021, out of every 2 children will have allergic rhinitis. Also of concern to medicine is the phenomenon of chronicity of the condition, despite the use of increasingly efficient drugs.
Panzironi, allergy problems now affect almost 1 in 3 Italians. It's practically a pandemic.
Yes, I believe that this medicine has to take note that Italians are getting sick in an extraordinary speed. If we think that today 1 out of 2 kids is allergic, it means that these people in 20 years half will be allergic. So it means that we are disproportionately increasing sick people. And despite in front I believe it is more than a pandemic, we still continue to think about the drug. We don't even question how and why these pathologies appear, and they haven't understood it yet, and we will try to help them understand it better this evening.
Come e perché compaiono queste patologie e non l'hanno ancora capito, e noi questa sera cercheremo di aiutarli a comprendere meglio.
And speaking of understanding, I want to show you our whole audience how so-called dogmatic medicine deals with this pathology. Let's see it together. Questa patologia, vediamolo insieme.
There is a lot of novelty in that there are biologic drugs that can specifically inhibit the allergic reaction, which is an antibody that blocks and neutralizes IgE, which I mentioned earlier are the antibodies that cause the allergic reaction. We are able to treat the most severe asthmas by greatly reducing the use of cortisone, which before was the only major weapon we had at our disposal. We have since this year, provided by the National Health System, immunotherapy for grasses, and soon we will have it for mites in tablet form. We have been using so-called vaccines for years. That is, this immunotherapy that basically consists of giving the patient the allergen, which is considered important for him to trigger the disease and induce in this patient a tolerogenic reaction.
In short, Panzironi medicine is moving forward as we understand it to new biologic drugs and immunotherapy.
Let's start with the concept that at times when there are major allergy crises, even medications are lifesavers. However, how can you not think that if we go and give medications all the time, medications that always play on our immune system, that then afterwards over time it can't make the condition chronic? And what does this official medicine do? Every day it invents a new drug. And sometimes our immune system maybe rebels. They have to understand, and I think it is really easy to understand because here are 4,000 people who have understood it, and they are not doctors. That it is the lifestyle that makes the difference on allergy. It is not the drugs.
So, Mr. Panzironi, we demonstrate with scientific arguments what causes allergy. Let's see it with this video.
Our immune system is based on the balance of two families of lymphocytes, those of the Th1 class and those of the Th2 class. Th2 is composed of lymphocytes that are devoted to the destruction of bacteria, while the Th1 class of lymphocytes is devoted to the destruction of viruses, fungi, and cancer cells. For example, when we are in the presence of an attack by a pathogen of the bacterial family, the immune system raises the production of lymphocytes belonging to the Th2 class and depresses that corresponding to the Th1 class. Unfortunately, if the immune system does not resolve this inflammation in a short time, or if excessive production of the Th2 class inflammatory cytokines or histamine continues, the system may remain unbalanced and lead to the chronic allergic response. Specifically, the Th2 system maintains an immune memory that will cause allergic responses upon subsequent contact with proteins that have activated the Th2 immune system.
Panzironi, the video explained to us that the very disruption of the Th1 and Th2 immune system first causes the onset of allergy and then its chronification.
We have explained very often, and I think the Life 120 people have memorized what Th1 and Th2 is. And then I have to tell you that I very often get to talk to doctors who then start doing Life 120 who say Panzironi, but I didn't remember it like I studied this Th1 and Th2. I mean, such an important thing about the immune system, which is practically unknown to primary care physicians. Then how do you think about treating your patients if you don't even realize how important the balance of our immune system is? And how do you then teach these doctors and make them understand how the Mediterranean diet is the real culprit of this disease? It's really a feat unless they read my book.
So Panzironi, now is the time to demonstrate with testimonials in hand because of course they will have the light bulb, how to follow a proper lifestyle, that is a Life 120 lifestyle can cure people of allergic diseases. So attention, Life 120 people, let's dim the lights in the hall. The question is this: who among you, before starting Life 120, had allergies, rhinitis, allergic asthma, food intolerances, atopic dermatitis, and seborrheic dermatitis? Turn on the light bulb. Well, now listen well to those of you who, following the Life 120 lifestyle, have been cured of these diseases. Turn off the light bulb. A few more light bulbs are left.
4 or 5 bulbs out of hundreds.
Well, of course I see it. Well, did you all turn it off? Everybody turn it off, because I'll ask you another question. Those of you who were taking medications for allergies, allergic asthma, food intolerances, atopic dermatitis, seborrheic dermatitis, turn on the light bulb. Here, these were taking medicines to treat these diseases. And now I ask you this question: who among you, after Life 120, is not taking more pharmacy, more medicines for these diseases? Here it is. It seems to me a very good result.
It seems to me a very good result, and I think again there will be a class of entrepreneurs who will have some difficulty. I maybe think of the pharmacies who after this episode start to say maybe it is better to look for another job.
Then, Mr. Panzironi, I would say let's go and find out what pathology we are going to deal with right away. Let's see it.
The pathology of hypertension is a real pandemic. In fact, there are 17 million hypertensives in Italy alone, a number that has doubled in the last 40 years. In addition, 1 in 2 people do not know they have it, putting them at serious risk for the occurrence of strokes and heart attacks. In fact, hypertension is primarily responsible for cardiovascular accidents, which are the leading cause of death in Italy. Treatment is purely pharmacological and involves drugs from the class of diuretics, beta blockers, calcium antagonists, and angiotensin inhibitors. Unfortunately, in addition to being symptomatic drugs only 60% of treated patients succeed in achieving optimal blood pressure control.
Then Panzironi, practically the video called it a pandemic, also this disease, because in Italy, more than 17 million people suffer from hypertension.
Well, if we consider that hypertension is a condition that involves people over the age of 50 or over 40, so we are basically talking about 1 in 2 people over this age threshold. Well, do you know how official medicine has responded to this thing, to this unstoppable phenomenon of hypertension? Well, very simple. They simply raise the threshold so that if you are 60 years old, you can also have a blood pressure 90 out of 150. That is still good for you.
Panzironi, let's now see a video where we can understand what advice is given today by official medicine to prevent hypertension.
We in Italy are lucky if they applied it, because we have the Mediterranean diet, the heritage.
Then there is the diet. Of mankind, the Mediterranean diet is very important. You can see it well in the picture. A diet rich in vegetables, a diet rich in anything you want, low in salt, but already the Mediterranean diet alone, even that, contributes, just the Mediterranean diet alone, to cause a further drop in blood pressure.
The reduction of
and
salt
not by
intake.
a little bit. Reducing salt intake is critical. There are 3 very simple little rules. 1, try to reduce the salt intake in the cooking water, put a little less. 2, don't add salt to the foods that come to the table, but those who have high blood pressure should not add salt to potatoes, salad, tomatoes. 3rd, try to reduce foods rich in salt.
Then Panzironi, we are very lucky to have the Mediterranean diet, which is also recognized as a World Heritage Site, and then just reduce salt in cooking pasta.
Look, I can tell you that when I selected this video, I was convinced initially that we were on a joke. I mean, how many more years do we have to wait before this dogmatic medicine realizes a biological truth, i.e., when we eat sugar, we activate insulin. Insulin activates aldosterone, and we get our blood pressure up. So other than the heritage of humanity, is this Mediterranean diet, if anything, it is the destroyer of humanity.
So, Panzironi, you will surely agree to try to make our audience understand what are the causes, the real causes of hypertension. Let's hope that maybe some of your detractors and maybe the medical ones will start a little bit to remember what they have studied before and they have forgotten. See this video.
High blood pressure is considered a very important contributor to the occurrence of heart attack. In fact, the very excessive blood pressure can induce rupture of atheromas and cause coronary arteries to close and induce heart attack. Increased blood pressure is caused by two distinct phenomena: increased fluid in the blood circuit and excessive contraction of the arteries. Increased fluid in the blood circuit can be induced by excessive production of aldosterone, a hormone that through the kidneys retains salt and induces the phenomenon of water retention. Excessive contraction can be induced by arterial stiffness caused by atherosclerotic disease or by high cortisol production.
Then, gentlemen, we understood with the video also, you, Mr. Panzironi, that high blood pressure is induced by the alteration of aldosterone and atherosclerotic pathologies. As you explained several times, depends precisely on sugars in the Mediterranean diet.
But look, these are such simple biological truths that really I am amazed how a doctor in front of this information cannot understand it. I mean, doctors have studied, they have studied 7-8 years, they have medical training, and here instead we have people in their 70s, maybe with 8th grade, who completely understood what is the relationship between carbohydrates and high blood pressure. Then maybe the question we have to ask ourselves is another one. But is it just ignorance or also interest?
So, Panzironi, I don't want to answer that question of yours, and I still think it's a question that you already have the answer to. However, during the broadcast of The Health Seeker, those who have followed us know that we have had hundreds of people, even in their 70s and 80s, who have seen their blood pressure return to normal, that is to the 80/120 values. Now it's time to prove it with this collective testimony also to this medicine that in short a little bit comes against us, and let's prove that their Life 120 lifestyle makes high blood pressure settle back to its right level. So let's dim the lights in the room. Here, attention Life 120 people, I ask you a very specific question. Who had before starting Life 120 hypertension, so also tachycardia and atrial fibrillation? Turn on the light bulb. So many, huh? Then I ask you another question. Who, following the Life 120 lifestyle, is no longer taking medication for these diseases? Turn off the light bulb. Here again, and optimal seems to me. Attention, who is taking medication for hypertension, tachycardia, atrial fibrillation? Turn on the light bulb. Here it is. Thank you, stay that way, because now I ask you another question. Who, after Life 120, no longer take medication for these diseases? Turn off the light bulb. Also here, seems to me a very good result, Panzironi says.
I think these are such obvious results that I hope that from tomorrow the doctors who are seeing us, because certainly so many doctors are watching us, tomorrow before they talk to a patient who comes into their doctor's office and asks them, but what can I do for my high blood pressure? Well, I expect them to say, change your diet before they recommend a pill.
cambia alimentazione prima di consigliare una pillola.
And so, let's close this little focus here with the involvement of the audience, and let's go and look at this fourth disease that is among the most discussed. Let's see what it is.
Diabetes represents the disease that, more than others, reflects the opulence of modern civilization. Virtually unknown until the early 19th century, today it represents a true epidemic and is increasing exponentially, especially in populations with Western lifestyles. In the year 1980, about 100 million people were diabetic. In 1995, we went to 135 million, in 2005 to 217 million, in 2010 to 285 million, and as of today, there are 422 million sufferers. With this trend, in 2030, there will be about 800 million diabetics in the world. To these completely out-of-control numbers, we must also add as many people who are instead living with hyperglycemia, thus an undiagnosed pre-diabetic phase that is still capable of damaging our bodies, exposing them to diseases such as cardiovascular disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and capable of reducing life expectancy by more than 10 years.
So Panzironi, we understood that in Italy there are more than 5 million diabetics, and this is a very serious disease. We know because then it precludes so many other diseases with her, and that reduces life expectancy by as much as 20 years.
Yes, it has to be said strongly that this disease is one of the worst. I sometimes get to talk to people who say, yes, I take the little pill, I have diabetes a little bit high. It's as if they don't care about the consequences. But the most serious thing is the dietary advice that diabetologists give to their patients. I think it's really criminal advice when we talk about nutrition.
So Panzironi, speaking of advice, I want to show you this video that provides just what the advice from official medicine is for people with diabetes. Let's see it.
People keep asking what is right to eat, and those with diabetes even more so. Let's try the yes-no game with food. Pasta.
Certainly always pasta at least once a day.
Rice?
Yes,
Bread?
yes, better if whole wheat.
Rusks?
Those two, but bread is better.
Cheese?
Cheese is good, but cheese has a lot of calories, a lot of fat a few times, but always on pasta.
Legumes?
Legumes, yes, lots instead of meat, instead of fish, instead of cheese, instead of sliced meat is protein.
Potatoes?
However, potatoes instead of bread can be good, instead of pasta can be good.
Polenta?
That polenta also has fewer carbohydrates than pasta bread.
But he told me almost all of them are. Are you sure?
But yes, I am sure. But the problem is that you have to be careful with quantities. Quantities make the difference often much more than quality. There are no forbidden foods. You have to eat intelligently, a little bit of everything, without exaggerating with some foods, especially those that have calories, those that have fat.
So Panzironi, we saw Professor Enzo Bonora, who is president of the Italian Society of Diabetology, who explained to us practically the recommended typical diet for diabetics. What do you think?
Well, I remain dumbfounded because to imagine a professor who has studied so many years, who has visited maybe for 20, 30 years his patients, and this professor continues to recommend the wrong diet without realizing that his very advice is making people sick and dying. Well, this seems to me absolutely absurd.
I suoi consigli stanno facendo ammalare e morire le persone, beh, questo mi sembra assolutamente assurdo.
So Panzironi, let's try to make our purpose to give scientific information. We do it with this video in the hope that maybe some professor will decide to change the approach too. Let's see the video. Decida di cambiare l'approccio. Vediamo il video.
Insulin is a hormone produced by the beta cells of the pancreas, and its main purpose is to regulate blood sugar in the bloodstream. Its action is directed toward those cells that have GLUT4, inducing its release into the cell cytosol and thus adhesion on the cell membrane. The target cells are muscle fiber cells, including those of the heart and adipocytes. Insulin then increases the sugar stores, called glycogen, in our muscles and stimulates adipose cells to take up glucose from the blood and turn it into fat. When our muscles can no longer take up sugar because they are saturated, insulin acts on the liver's HMG enzyme, promoting the production of LDL cholesterol, thus allowing the liver to assimilate more glucose. Finally, insulin acts on the hormone aldosterone, causing the accumulation of salt that will cause our body cells, which are normally insulin insensitive, to take up glucose.
So Panzironi diabetics have problems with insulin and the resistance of its receptors. You have explained it to us many times that just overactivating this hormone, then eating all the sugars in the Mediterranean diet is the cause of diabetes.
Well, we explained it in every way. And these doctors, but also my fellow journalists, what do? They criminalize me because they say I claim to take away the insulin. But I think all the people here in the studio have never seen an episode where I have stated these things. And so I wonder why they have to attack me on things that were not said. That is, it is obvious that a person who takes insulin is followed by a diabetologist. It is normal that insulin is commensurate with one's blood sugar. What sense would it make to advise taking off insulin and continuing to eat normally? It is normal that the doctor gives the medication and the doctor takes it off. How many times have we said that? How many times have you on the broadcast stated these things? Then I get the doubt. Who prefer to titular in the newspapers? Panzironi says take away the insulin because they don't want to take responsibility for their so serious faults, which is to keep recommending the wrong nutrition.
Then Panzironi, we during the Health Seekers saw that virtually all witnesses with type 2 diabetes problems achieved glycemic normalization, and even those with type 1 diabetes has reduced a lot, even a lot of insulin, or is able to take it out. We also had some very important cases, obviously, as you said, always performed by a diabetologist, but let's see to the collective testimony here of the Life 120 people. Let's dim the lights. Life 120 people here in the studio, attention. I ask you this. Who of you before starting Life 120 had problems with diabetes, hyperglycemia, and hyperinsulinemia? Turn on the light bulb. Here are those of you who, following the Life 120 lifestyle, are cured of these diseases. Turn off the light bulb. Panzironi, really almost all of them.
Well, there are 5 million diabetics in Italy. Just think how many diabetologists follow 5 million people. And imagine if tomorrow they all followed Life 120. What would be the number of diabetologists who would continue to do their job? Ask yourself this question.
And while the Life 120 people are asking this question, I am requesting to turn the lights down because I have to ask another question. Those of you who are taking medications to treat diabetes, hyperglycemia, hyperinsulinemia, turn on the light bulb. Here you go. Thank you. And now those who after Life 120 no longer take medication for these conditions, turn off the light bulb. Also here, an incredible result, no?
This is an incredible result because then we always have to remember that medication is not that it completely regularizes blood sugar. We had many people who had to take the medication, but their blood sugar, and especially their blood sugar up and down, remained a problem. Instead, these people are not only cured and will continue to be cured people as long as they continue to follow Life 120, but they have brought their blood sugar back into an optimal range, and therefore they will no longer run the classic risks of diabetic people.
It seems to me linear what you are saying, Mr. Panzironi. And now let's go and find out what is the new pathology that we are going to talk about. Let's see the video.
Gastroesophageal reflux and gastritis are among the most common diseases in Italy and Western countries. The percentage of people suffering from them in our country is up to 50% of the population, so about 30 million Italians also suffer from them concomitantly. In addition, very often hiatal hernia is also associated with these conditions. The treatment of gastroesophageal reflux and gastritis involves constant and lifelong pharmacological treatments for patients, since they aim to relieve the symptoms but not the causes. The most prescribed drugs are antacids, histamine antagonist drugs, proton pump inhibitor drugs, and prokinetic drugs. Antacids used are alginates that reduce stomach acidity. Histamine antagonist drugs are able to bind histamine HII receptors, preventing the production of hydrochloric acid. Proton pump inhibitors prevent stomach cells from secreting hydrochloric acid. Prokinetic drugs stimulate motility and accelerate gastric emptying.
Then, Panzironi, let's do a quick calculation. If there are 30 million people in Italy who suffer from gastritis and reflux, and we take out children up to the age of 18, so children and young people up to the age of 18, we are practically 80% of the Italian population suffering from it.
But if when we are faced with these numbers, it is clear that it is no longer a pandemic, it is really a malaise of the human being. But if this malaise has only been there when we have increased the Mediterranean diet, and yet we do not find it in the animal kingdom, these are not questions that this medicine that is supposed to cure us should be asking. Instead, what does this medicine do? This medicine cures us, and it does it with drugs, and it does it throughout the patient's life, despite the problem of side effects, despite the fact that many drugs are not effective, despite the fact that these people continue to have a very bad quality of life. I think this can no longer be accepted as a method of treatment of the Italian people.
Then, Panzironi? I, however, want to show you the indications that are given to prevent reflux. Let's see the video.
We have a wide variety of medications that work very well in suppressing gastric acid secretion. We have good symptom control, so the yes pharmacological anti-acid control to control the very production of acid in the stomach. However, the dietary adjustments, lifestyle can be important in making that abnormal intra-abdominal pressure that promotes reflux to be somewhat less. For example, mint, chocolate. Some of these foods can promote acid secretion, potentiate it, and so if there is a lot of acid in the stomach, it can go up a little bit more into the esophagus. Other things that are not recommended, fatty foods, for example, coffee is another one of those foods that can affect, but not as decisively as people think, but especially the temperature of the coffee in case of an esophagitis. An inflammation of the esophagus has to be somewhat controlled because obviously if it is too hot, it can obviously irritate even more an eventual esophagitis.
Then Panzironi, the professor we listened to, told us about lifestyle. Perfect, so obviously nutrition, so no mint, no chocolate, and then okay for coffee, but watch the temperature. What do you think?
It almost sounds like a joke.
I repeat it.
But I wonder how it is possible that there are gastroenterologists who continue to treat thousands and thousands of patients for years, because we have seen that practically all of them are sick and have never made the connection between following the Mediterranean diet lifestyle and the occurrence of reflux or gastritis, or have not read the same research that I had to read to write my book. I wonder, But do these doctors, besides prescribing drugs, but care about their education?
Si preoccupano della loro formazione.
Mr. Panzironi, you are asking a lot of questions this evening. I hope you don't want to steal my job, that of asking the questions, however you ask very thoughtful questions. Then I instead want to show you, since you have thought about the training of ours from some doctors, I would like to maybe make it easier for you with this video that we show obviously to the whole audience. Let's see it together.
There is a close relationship between acidosis and the occurrence of gastritis. In fact, acidosis is the direct cause of gastritis. In fact, on the walls of the stomach, there are cells called parietal cells that have intracellular canaliculi and proton pumps that, upon stimulation, initiate acid secretion. This process uses carbon dioxide and water to produce hydrogen ions, H+, and bicarbonate ions. So these cells produce both hydrochloric acid and bicarbonate at the same time. In this way, the stomach is able to digest food while protecting itself from acid through the basic mucus on its walls. But the parietal cells are also used by the body to produce bicarbonate, useful as a buffer system to keep the pH of the blood in balance. But this at the same time induces the production of hydrochloric acid in the stomach, in the absence, however, of food to digest.
Then, Mr. Panzironi, to me seem to be very simple explanations. So simple that all the Life 120 people, as you say, are aware of the pathologies of this pathology as well as the others. But then I wonder, but is it possible then that the only cure is pharmacological?
Obviously, we have shown that it is exactly the opposite, because these drugs are not only very often ineffective, but many times they also create really important side effects. And yet it would serve little purpose to watch an episode of The Health Seeker. It would serve to read my book. In short, I don't believe that a doctor who cares about his patients cannot invest some of his time to try to understand, and that it should even be a journalist who teaches these things, a journalist who is even accused of abuse of the medical profession.
Then, Panzironi, you said in this speech that you have watched an episode of The Health Seeker. I can tell you that I have watched all of them. And practically all the witnesses who came to talk to us about gastritis reflux, which, by the way, maybe they were conditions that they had been suffering from for years, have resolved in a very short time, some even in just one day. This kind of condition, and I prove it to you with this collective testimony. So let's dim the lights. Here in the theater, pay attention then to the Life 120 people here. The question is this: who among you, before starting Life 120, had gastritis and reflux? Turn on the light bulb. Wow, so many. Stop. So those of you following the Life 120 lifestyle have been cured of these diseases. Turn off the light bulb. Practically almost all, as you said. However, I want to take away another curiosity, Panzironi, because for these diseases, as we said, there is only pharmacological treatment. So I come to ask you people, Life 120, attention, who among you were taking medications to treat gastritis and reflux? Turn on the light bulb. Here they are. So pretty much everybody who had on before stopped. So why now, I ask you, who after Life 120 is no longer taking medication for gastritis and reflux? Turn off the light bulb. Thank you.
I think if we are being followed by the owners of the national networks like RAI, Mediaset, the executives, or Lasset and so on, will be very concerned, because these drugs are the ones where the pharmaceuticals spend the most money on advertising on these broadcasters.
Sono quelli dove le farmaceutiche spendono più soldi per la pubblicità su queste emittenti.
Then Panzironi, I would like to move on to the next pathology, and we find out with this video.
Intestinal problems affect almost 8 out of 10 Italians and manifest themselves with various symptoms, all attributable to intestinal dysbiosis. In fact, 28% suffer from bloating and meteorism, 32% from abdominal pain and tightness, 25% from digestive difficulties, 25% from constipation, and 27% from diarrhea. The most commonly used treatment is pharmacological with symptomatic medicines that tend to chronicize the condition by acting on the symptoms and not the causes. In addition to pharmacological abuse is the indiscriminate use of probiotics, which very often are useless if not harmful. To this must be added the lack of preparation of the medical profession, which often does not adequately know the latest research on the microbiota.
Then, Mr. Panzironi, we realize with this video that 80% of the population suffers from some form of intestinal problem.
This is proof that what the Italian population is eating is not good for their body, i.e., the gut is really our alarm system. If we put in foods that create alterations to our microbiota, it is inevitable that we will have problems with constipation or diarrhea. Is it possible that this medicine does not even pose the problem of what we eat and the correlation with what it entails? Even gastroenterologists, I have met several people who say, but what we eat has no relation to intestinal problems. But do you realize what nonsense we have to hear?
Then, Mr. Panzironi, I really want to show you the new solutions put out by official medicine. Let's see this video.
Here, before we talk though about the water, the hyperozonated water, I want to understand if it is a troublesome treatment. We understood that the cannula is very small and very thin.
The cannula is not really annoying. It is annoying psychologically the first time you propose it to the patient, but once he has tried it, absolutely it is not annoying.
Let's talk about the water, this particular water, right? So definitely you have to drink, I mean, for intestinal problems, you have to drink.
But the water, let's say in quotes, healing water is the 3-4 glasses daily that are ozonated. The water acts as an ozone carrier because it binds.
I mean, we should buy this little car, this one here.
Or they go, many oxygen ozone therapy centers already have it, so one can also just log in and go and drink the 3 to 4 glasses daily. And then if you want...
And then the properties of this water, Professor?
Well, meanwhile, it's an antibacterial, so it goes to clean up all that is the tract of both the stomach and the whole intestine.
Then, Panzironi, I told you new methods, including the use of ozone therapy.
Can I tell you that they make it all up except to do the proper nutrition?
You can say that. Panzironi, though, I think at this point it's time to give some scientific information. We are the health seekers, so we have to give some scientific information, and let's see then this tutorial.
Carbohydrates are the food that are most capable of altering our gut microbiota, but also damaging our digestive system. First, sugar interacts with the gastric juices, preventing the proper digestion of proteins and fats. Then, in the duodenum, sugars are attacked by bacteria inducing acidification of the food, bolus that will induce ineffectiveness of the amylase enzymes necessary for protein digestion. Finally, acidification of the food bolus induces disruption of the protective mucus present on the endothelium of the intestine. In addition, excess sugar selects a homo-fermentative bacterial population, which will result in the elimination of the hetero-fermentative population necessary for the digestion of soluble fibers, the metabolites of which are precisely propionic acid, acetic acid, and butyric acid, substances necessary for the nutrition of enterocyte cells in the intestine.
Then, Panzironi, the video told us about these metabolic processes that take place within our intestines and how sugars are responsible for intestinal diseases.
There are tens of thousands of scientific studies that tell us these truths. The problem is that they are studies that date back maybe 10 years ago. Instead, our family doctors were trained 20, 30, 40 years ago, and the training of new doctors is done on the latest drug, the latest discovery, and nothing is done instead to teach these doctors the new scientific evidence, so how food can interact with our gut and our microbiota.
Panzironi, you may remember that we had so many witnesses during the Health Seeker who had even 30-year problems of diarrhea or constipation, and in a very few days they resolved. Let's come to the collective testimony. Then those of you who before starting Life 120 had intestinal problems, constipation, diarrhea, dysbiosis, turn on the light bulb. Also here many stop, because I ask you, who of you following the Life 120 lifestyle has healed? Obviously these diseases turn off the light bulb. A very good result. Then, thank you, turn off all the light bulbs, because I ask you another question at this point. Those of you who were taking medications to treat intestinal problems, constipation, diarrhea, dysbiosis, turn on the light bulb. Obviously many. Those of you after Life 120, no longer taking medication for these conditions, turn off the light bulb. And here again, there's virtually nothing left.
Do you think that in recent years a thriving industry has sprung up on probiotics? On prebiotics, it has become practically normal to go to the supermarket and buy milk enzymes, go to the doctor and have them prescribed. Is an extraordinary abuse. All these people no longer use these products. In this case, you start to worry that it produces these substances.
And so thank you, Mr. Panzironi. I would close this little chapter here. And I would move on to the next pathology. Let's see what it is.
Joint pain affects 50% of the population over the age of 50. Practically about 15 million Italians suffer from degenerative osteoarticular, arthritic or arthritic type of diseases. But the percentage rises to 80% in people over the age of 75. These are disabling degenerative diseases affecting all joints, such as those of the knees, hips, hands, and vertebrae. The national health expenditure for the treatment of these diseases amounts to about $6.5 billion annually, but it is bound to increase over time because drug treatments are only symptomatic. The number of restorative surgeries, such as joint replacements, has also taken on impressive numbers: more than 100,000 hip replacements a year, 85,000 knee replacements, and 15,000 shoulder, knee, and ankle replacements.
So Panzironi, practically these pathologies are so prevalent that it has become a certainty that as we get older we have to put in the bill for suffering from osteoarticular pathologies.
Yes, this is what the so-called official medicine tells us. And we see a lot of people who then have to resort to prostheses, then have major surgeries. And yet we have shown that simply with correct lifestyle, people even who were prepared for surgery have cancelled the surgery and returned to running. Here is the evidence that these doctors, these orthopedists should understand.
Then Panzironi, I want to show you right away a new video, because here we are going to go. Let's see the new solutions put in place by official medicine. Let's see.
All the four forms, initial, intermediate, advanced, and degree, certainly a part of physiotherapy. The brace that we see at this moment, the doctor is packing. And then, as we know, because we have talked about it several times, the diet and especially nutritional supplements, because the supplements substitute instead of traditional drugs in the intermediate form. Instead, here we become a little bit more active. We, doctors, surgeons, because we have to perform infiltrations. And then we have, for some time now, the possibility of using a technique that is based on a laser, on the other hand, as far as the form, advanced but non-surgical form. For the last few months, for about a year, we can use particular cells that are found in the abdomen, in the fat of the abdomen. They are so-called mesenchymal stem cells. Basically, the severe form remains, the one for which all the things I told you are not important, they are not effective. there remains the surgical intervention, which, however, as I often say, is absolutely not a drama.
So Panzironi, basically you go from massages to braces, from stem cell infiltration to prostheses.
May I tell you that it seems to me a path to hell? This medicine presents us with this future. So we start with massages. Then at some point we do the infiltrations. And when the infiltrations are no longer good, well, then we replace the joint with a prosthesis. This medicine has to understand that our body is absolutely a perfect machine. We are able to put our cartilages back in condition to be rebuilt, to make them work again. Only one thing is needed: the correct nutrition.
Panzironi, may I take the liberty to point something out to you? Because the doctor also talked about supplementation. Okay, as a substitution of drugs, you, while never having said that, is being accused obviously of that, while that is a doctor, does it quietly. So in short, that seems a little strange to me, doesn't it?
Well, you know, they attack us on this thing of supplements, even obviously saying things that I never said, we never said, to replace medications. Well, here on the other hand, if a doctor says it, nobody says practically anything.
So I would like to get the audience here to the audience at home and maybe even the medical class to understand what osteoarthritis depends on, and let's see this video.
Interleukin-6 is a protein molecule produced by various cell types, particularly immune system cells, muscle cells, and adipocytes. Interleukin-6 is a cytokine that can induce both a pro- and anti-inflammatory effect. It all depends on the amount of this cytokine present in the bloodstream. Its job is, for example, to stimulate chondrocyte cells present in cartilage, but also osteoclasts for bone, tissue remodeling, and fibroblasts for matrix remodeling. It is therefore a cytokine that can promote tissue repair following trauma or simply in response to physical activity. Excess interleukin-6, on the other hand, induces hyperactivation of the Th1 immune system, the same system that is activated when we are under attack by a cold virus. In fact, interleukin-6 acts on the hypothalamus, inducing fever. The excess also acts on cartilage by inflaming it, excessively increasing degradation, thus inducing the phenomenon of osteoarthritis.
So Panzironi, the video made us understand practically the relationship between inflammation and the occurrence of degenerative diseases like osteoarthritis.
Well, this is information that is found practically on tens of thousands of scientific researches. Then I wonder why these doctors are always trained on the latest molecule discovered by the pharmaceutical company that then sells the product, and not on these scientific researches that confirm how nutrition acts on pathology.
Panzironi, I can tell you that we have had many witnesses who have solved even very serious joint problems, and some of them have then avoided, they were already on the list maybe for a prosthesis or an operation, have then avoided this surgery. However, I would like to show you the collective testimony with the live 120 people to whom I asked to concentrate. Let's dim the lights and I ask you a question. I already see hands up that ready to light up. Then attention AP Live people. Who among you before starting AP Live had joint pain, arthritis, low back pain, arthritis, neck pain? Turn on the light bulb. Lots of them here too. Hold on. Who by following the Life 120 lifestyle has been cured of these diseases? Turn off the light bulb. Optimal outcome. Okay, turn off all the bulbs, please, because I'll ask you another question right now. Let's dim the lights. Who among you was taking medication to treat joint pain, arthritis, low back pain, arthritis, neck pain? Turn on the light bulb. Here they are. So many, of course. Stop right there. Who among you, after Life 120, no longer takes medication for these conditions? Turn off the light bulb. Outstanding, Mr. Panzironi.
Well, I think after this testimony, who needs to start worrying this time is the people who sell knee and hip replacements.
Panzironi, at this point I would like to move on to the last pathology. Let's see the video.
One of the most progressive diseases is undoubtedly obesity, which can be considered, with good reason, a true epidemic. Statistical data tell us today that 33% of the Italian population is reported to be overweight and 9.7% in a state of obesity. And the trend does not seem to be abating. On the contrary, estimates speak of an obesity rate that will reach 43% of the population in 2025, or 20 million obese people. Italy also has the sad record of being the country with the highest obesity in children in the 6 to 9-year-old age group in the European community. For the national health system, obesity-related diseases have reached a record expenditure of 8.7 billion euros, 6.7% of total public spending, an expenditure that will triple in the next 10 years. From a health perspective, obese people have a tenfold increased risk of getting many related diseases such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, cancer, and an average reduction in life expectancy of 20 years.
So, Panzironi, we are seeing an exponential increase in obesity in Italy, and the future will be even worse given, and this is incontrovertible data, that we have the most obese children in Europe.
Well, I wonder, in the face of this pandemic, this extraordinary thing, this increase in the volume of people we see on the street, I think those who do Life 120 now, when they meet someone, they immediately see if he eats carbohydrates. No, he immediately sees if he is bloated, if he is overweight. And I think it must have happened to you as well, to go to the supermarket and see the customer behind you or in front of you, see them overweight, look at what they are buying, and they are eating carbohydrates.
In all forms.
I mean, but if an abnormal person who belongs to the Life 120 people notices this, but how do these doctors not notice the direct relationship between the Mediterranean diet and obesity?
So, Panzironi, let's see the new solutions put forth by official medicine regarding obesity. Let's look at it together.
So, in the meantime, let's say that today's surgery is the only therapy that guarantees the treatment of obesity and that allows to have a result that is at least the loss of 50% of the excess weight, and that this is of lasting over time, that the other initiatives tend to fail over time. It is a surgery that has a double value. In fact, it is one of those surgeries that is classified as metabolic. It acts well, because by removing this part here, if you frame me now, I will. This is the stomach. We are going to resect. This is a technical term, and maybe you can see what I mean. The gastric fundus is removed, and this whole part of the stomach here, by removing this part of the stomach here, we remove ghrelin secretion, which acts on the sense of hunger.
So, Panzironi, apparently we don't only have to resort to bariatric surgery to solve this problem.
Well, first of all, I call these kinds of operations medical butchery. And I think it's so absurd, this practice, that it really sanctions the failure of official medicine and dietetics, because they themselves are the ones who can't get people to lose weight. And what is the solution they find? On the shoulders of patients, do you support these diseases and these operations that are going to maim people? And why? Why won't they tell them that the Mediterranean diet makes them fat and obese?
So we, Panzironi, let's do some scientific information and see this video in the hope that maybe someone who is following us from home decides, who has this kind of problem, decides to take up the Life 120 lifestyle of proper nutrition. Let's see it.
Insulin is a hormone that can be considered a real lifesaver. In fact, it is thanks to this hormone that we are able to keep our blood sugar low despite eating a lot of sugar. Insulin acts in several ways. Through special gates, GLUT4 makes sugar enter our muscles, stimulates LDL production by the liver, acts on fat cells by forcing them to assimilate glucose. Finally, through the phenomenon of water retention, it forces other cells in the body to use sugar. When our metabolism slows down, all the sugar we cannot consume is stored as fat in our fat cells. The adipocytes most sensitive to the action of insulin are those found in the abdomen in men and on the legs, buttocks in women. This is why we speak of android obesity and gynoid obesity. Subcutaneous cells are less sensitive to insulin and are instead more willing to accumulate dietary intake fat.
So, Panzironi, it is evident that insulin is responsible for this pathology.
Well, but it is evident, it is written in virtually every biology book. And yet these dietitians continue to believe that the problem of obesity is related to the fat we eat and not to carbohydrates, a simple biological truth. Really, we find these things in biology books, we find them in hundreds of thousands of scientific researches. Then I wonder, what books did these dietitians study in?
So, Panzironi, we know very well that the Life 120 lifestyle is not done to lose weight, but I call it the pleasant side effect, again with quotation marks, which is that you lose weight and we immediately experience a weight loss. This is because there is the loss of fat fluids and then an increase in muscle mass. We have seen this in hundreds of witnesses within our show, The Health Seeker, but tonight we are going to do it here. So, people Life 120, listen to me, because when you turn on the light bulb, you have to keep it on for the next question as well. Now you will understand why. So once you have it on, keep it on and high, because the question is this. Let's turn it down. The lights. Those of you who have lost more than 20 pounds by following the Life 120 lifestyle, turn on the light bulb. Here, these people have lost more than 20 kilos. Stay that way, please. Stay lit, because now I ask, those of you who have lost 15 to 20 pounds, turn on the light bulb. There you go. That's right. Stay like that. Don't turn off the light bulb. Keep it on. I ask another question. Those of you who have lost 10 to 15 pounds, turn on the light bulb. Perfect. Stand so still. Those of you who have lost 5 to 10 kilos, turn on the light bulb. Standing so still. You are beautiful. Those of you who have lost up to 5 kilos, turn on the light bulb. Panzironi, here they are, his people, Life 120. Thank you. So Panzironi, I invite you to join me here. And from us, a thank you to all the Life 120 people who are following us from home. But let's bring down the Palazzo dello Sport in Rome for these wonderful Life 120 people here. Thank you all.
Today is a historic day that we will remember in our hearts from tomorrow. Life 120 will have the numbers, will have the opportunity to really make a difference. And to help millions of people get healthier again.